Back now with Endgame. Probably the best way to describe the uncertainty in the Democratic field. Let me just put up headlines from this week, because I think it helps explain the uncertainty. New York Times had how Kamala Harris's campaign unraveled. It was very, very much written in the past tense. Bloomberg is crushing all other 2020 Democrats with his ad spending in Super Tuesday states. You heard Amy Klobuchar talk about that. Warren nosedives a new nationwide poll. Quinnipiac, who had probably overpolled her, now had her dropping dramatically. Buttigieg leading in both Iowa and New Hampshire. Maria Teresa, who's the front runner in the Democratic primary right now? Is there one?
Well, I think it's interesting, right? So Joe Biden is still leading the polls nationwide because he has the highest name recognition. But when you look at Iowa, where people are doing the work, they've rolled up the sleeves. Mayor Pete, he's leading. And I think is that as individuals start getting to know the candidates on the ground, that's who we should be looking at. Who is the one that's actually finding that voter that is encouraging them to move forward? Otherwise, you could say it sounds like it's a dead heat, but it's not. It's more of where are they spending most of their time and who's gravitating towards them.
Well, it feels like the candidates are treating Pete as the front runner now. Here's a Cory Booker super PAC ad that I think actually gets to a larger issue. Take a look.
He's a Rhodes Scholar, a successful mayor, a uniter. No, not that guy. It's Cory Booker.
Betsy, look, the Cory Booker conundrum, and everybody's trying to, why doesn't he catch on, da-da-da-da-da, and I think people will be writing about that for a while. But to me, Buttigieg is about to get his time in the barrel, like Elizabeth Warren. She didn't hold up very well. How's he going to do?
She had a tough time. And part of the reason that she had trouble, I think, could indicate that Buttigieg may not go through the same experience. I talked to one Democratic operative last night who said part of the explanation for her problems over the last month has been that when she changed her stance on healthcare issues, she got the worst of both worlds because she frustrated progressives, she alienated some of her base, but she doesn't have nearly the credibility that she would need to try to persuade moderates that she isn't sort of at her core a candidate of the left. Buttigieg, however, has a moment right now where he can decide, is he going to try to change some of his core policy stances? Is he going to try to move the flag that he's planted in an effort to expand his support? And if he does, he could go through the same thing that Warren just went through.
David Brooks, though, this African-American issue for Pete Buttigieg seems problematic. I want to at least put up the headline. Pete Buttigieg is a lying MF. This is with Michael Harriot of The Root. It proves men like him are more willing to perpetuate the fantastic narrative of Negro neighborhoods needing more role models and briefcase carriers that make the people in power stare into the sun and see the blinding light of racism. Pete Buttigieg doesn't want to change anything. He just wants to be something. Now, Buttigieg did what you'd expect him to do. He called up the writer, and because that's one way to deal with this. And here's how the writer responded on Tuesday. The only thing I actually know about Pete Buttigieg is that he is a white man. But Pete Buttigieg listened, which is all you can ask a white man to do. Can Pete get through this moment?
Yeah, I think so. One of the questions I've started asking is, like, who's the Jimmy Carter here? Because we're in a moment where we need a moral rinse. And so in 76, that was Jimmy Carter, a completely unlikely presidential candidate running against a lot of qualified senators. And he just seemed like a moral rinse, and he seemed relaxing. I think one of the reasons Warren has suffered is Warren presidency seems kind of exhausting. We have 4 more years of battle. And I think Buttigieg seems he's less the fighter, more, I can have a normal life again. And so normalcy's a good trait.
Al, what do you make of him? You fear him?
Yeah, listen, one thing's been surprising to me is how wide the lane on the center is in this presidential primary. If you add Biden and Mayor Pete, and if you add Amy Klobuchar, you're getting a pretty big chunk of the Democrat Party at a time when the advertising's been that it's only people far to the left can hold up the anchor of the base. I don't know if it's too early to talk about a brokered convention.
It's too early.
If I was, Mayor Bloomberg, I would think, and he's a deep thinker. Well, he's putting all his takes on that Super Tuesday, and I think he's either going to be a one-day candidate Super Tuesday, or he's going to make sure that the delegate spread is such that he can make a good argument at the convention.
Maria Teresa, assess Pete Buttigieg. Is he a nominee that is going? There was all this code attack on him. He can't put the Obama coalition together. It was subtle code attacks. This coalition.
I think that's the challenge, is that right now he's doing quite well in states that don't reflect the majority of the voters that was this coalition of Obama voters. And I'm talking about disproportionately Latino, African American, and young people. And I was talking to someone within his camp, and I said, how is he polling with young people? Because I figured that would be an indication. It's like, not well. So
I know he's the
that's
millennial candidate that has no millennial
has
support.
no millennial support. So, and I think that says volumes that this race is long. We still have time, but he's going to have to figure out how to appeal outside of Iowan voters to make sure that he actually has something stronger.
Just remember about older voters. They vote. They always show up for
But
the
young voters
caucuses.
have been voting.
I know.
Last year.
I hear you. Well, they show up in the primaries. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. This was no leftover Sunday, was it? We'll be back next week because if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press. It's turkey chili time tonight, though. Last day of turkey. Enjoy. Hello from Washington. I'm Chuck Todd, and thanks for checking out the Meet the Press channel on YouTube. Click on the button down here to subscribe and click over here to watch the latest interviews, highlights, and other digital exclusives.